Welcome to Kindred, hosted by me, Kate, and my sister, Jen. In this podcast, we explore our human relationship to animals and nature. The abrupt human disconnect created by the pandemic, like for many of us, turned my world and business, Otis and Rue dog collars, upside down. But it also emphasized the critical need in myself and others to reconnect to animals and nature for our overall well-being.
Join us every week as we interview scientists, conservationists, animal advocates, authors, and many others.
In connecting to our world, we also connect to compassion, empathy, and understanding. How can we see ourselves as not separate from animals and nature, but as a part of an active ecosystem? Hey guys, welcome to Kindred. How are you today, sister?
Oh, killing it.
Yeah?
I'm killing it today. Yeah.
You pretty much kill life every day, I think, actually.
I think I'm hoping if I say it, it'll come true.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Fake it till you make it.
Or think it into existence or something like that. Either of those work.
Will it into the
reality.
Will it into reality. Well, that's okay. I'm good with that.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's totally fine.
I'm good too. Wondering how everyone else is doing today. We've got a lot today. This is a generally interesting and overall fun conversation we're having with Sally Compton from Think Wild, which is a wildlife conservation center out in Bend, Oregon. She was great to talk to. But before we get to Sally and Think Wild, there's a couple highlights I wanted to tell you about. Two of these are, again, Instagram follows for me and for both of us, actually. The first one is called Sheldrick Trust in Kenya. And they are an incredible organization. They rescue and raise baby elephants.
Magical.
Really magical. And, from a few days old, however they find them, to teenagers, which is like they're with them for many, many years. So you can adopt a baby elephant, which you and I both have done.
Yes. And
a couple times.
And they have so much information on their website about each elephant. So they do a really amazing job of like sharing that with the public too. So definitely check it out. Yeah,
they keep you up to date. There's a newsletter and all the stories are just really so heartwarming and heartbreaking. But ultimately incredible. And to watch these little, they are, and how they care for each other. And there's nanny elephants, and they all have these roles within these. All of a sudden, this little family's made up, and then a new baby comes in, and they accept the new baby, and there's a nursery.
As sad as it is that they all are there because of the sad stories that happen to them, they live with a lot of joy, you can tell, and they're handled with so much love. And just to watch these caregivers interact with them, it's just so inspiring.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's
field trip.
And you really feel like you actually following them over time. You feel like you're looking at their sentient beings 100%. And it's like, you might as well be just looking at kids. It's they're like half human. Anyway, you can find them. Their website is sheldrickwildlifetrust.org. And then on IG, they're just Sheldrick Trust. So the other one is a rhino orphanage out of South Africa. You can find them at therhinoorphanage.co.za. And they're also on Instagram. I think they're just Rhino Orphanage on Instagram. But again, the same applies to the Rhino Orphanage. How they come across the rhinos is, of course, devastating, because most of the time it's because poachers have killed the mother to take her horn. So they find emaciated, lost babies sometimes injured because, lions have tried to kill them or whatever. And it's absolutely heartbreaking. And their transition is tough. They cry, they call, they pace, they wrap their eyes and plug their ears. So it's kind of like a horse to cover them. It sort of calms them. So they have a lot less sense coming in.
Do they not respond the same way as elephants to like having other rhinos around is not comforting for them?
Not at first. And they don't have like a whole crew of rhinos like the elephant. It's a different setup with that species.
That's really sad.
I think because rhinos are a little more solitary of a species than elephants. Not that they also aren't as clued into their way and life and everything, and they're incredible, but they're also, they're just doing amazing work down there. And so please follow them. You can also adopt a rhino, and they're as on it as Sheldrick is with the baby elephants. They send you newsletters. I mean, you just can follow the course of these little babies' lives. Really incredible. The last thing I wanted to tell you about was an incredible article that you turned me on to through the Daily, the New York Times podcast.
Oh yeah, that was amazing.
With Sam Anderson, called "The Last Two Northern White Rhinos on Earth." And I'm forgetting the girls' names, but they call them the girls. And he had gotten wind of it somehow, and he's like, "I'm going there." And he stayed and documented and wrote this really amazing article that you can find on the New York Times. Just Google Sam Anderson article, New York Times, white rhinos. It'll pop up. He explains so beautifully why we should care about a species.
Yeah.
And ultimately, he takes us to the real reason, which is love. But the way he gets to that place is it's a beautiful story of these two. It's a mother-daughter white rhino, the last two on the earth. And it really, it was really moving. I'll never forget it.
It's a beautiful piece of writing. Yeah,
beautiful piece of writing.
Really beautiful.
Yep.
Yeah.
So check that out. So now let's introduce Sally. Sally Compton. Like I said, she's with Think Wild. She's the executive director of Think Wild. She leads operations, community outreach, education, conservation, and key relationship and partner initiatives for Think Wild. So she's talking to us about wildlife and also specifically birds of prey, which you and I love, especially you. But yeah, she talks about the challenges that they face in connection to the human wildlife conflict, and how we can support these, especially birds of prey, often misunderstood birds, and understand the critical role they play in keeping our backyards clean. So let's go meet Sally. Sally, welcome to Kindred.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. We are so excited to have you with us today. Jen and I love birds of prey and have long wanted to speak with someone about all things raptors. So, but before we get started into that, just how did you get into wildlife rescue?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess it started kind of a while ago. When I was home on break from college, I think I was just like, driving to dinner or something and saw some movement on the side of the road. And turns out it was a little squirrel that had been hit by a car, but I think it only had a little hurt leg. And so, of course, the first thing I did was go on my phone and Google squirrel rescue. Where should I bring it? And there was this amazing woman that drove all the way out 45 minutes to meet me, pick up the squirrel. And it was right then and there that she was like, I told her about how I love animals and how I was studying evolutionary biology in college. And this is in Florida, by the way. And she said, "Oh, well, you should come out and start volunteering." And so literally that weekend, I started volunteering at this little, backyard wildlife clinic over on the Florida coast. And I remember like that first weekend, we picked up baby raccoons. There was like an injured vulture in a McDonald's parking lot. And then we went and raised like $400 on a street corner at PetSmart. And
oh my gosh,
that was really my first exposure to wildlife rehab, which of course is, you know, a unique experience. But it was after that I kind of learned about the field and, you know, what it could do for wildlife and, you know, how inspiring it was for me as a young adult. And so, you know, in college, I did mostly research, and I ended up traveling all over the world doing research in, you know, South Africa, Costa Rica, the Philippines. But somehow I ended up over on the Oregon coast, where I was working at the Oregon Coast Aquarium, and I just fell in love with this state. And specifically, I fell in love with Bend. So pretty much like every other weekend, I would drive out to Bend and go hiking and skiing and, you know, all the outdoor things. And I saw that there was, I mean, it's so serendipitous. I saw there was a job opening to start up a new wildlife hospital in Bend. And they were looking for an executive director to really, you know, take this seed and run with it. And I applied, I got the job, and I moved out here, and it's been such an incredible experience ever since.
That's amazing. So is that what took you to Think Wild?
Yeah. So that's what took me to Think Wild. So Think Wild is a nonprofit wildlife hospital here in Bend, Oregon. It's really kind of in its early stages of development. We actually just opened for all native wildlife intake. This past February, we were open for mammals last year, but due to COVID, it was a little bit delayed. So it's really a new organization. And just in the past year and a half that I've been here, we've grown from just me to having 4 staff.
Wow, that's incredible. Well done. That's exciting. So what's the mission of Think Wild?
Yeah, so our mission is to inspire the high desert community to care for and protect native wildlife through education, conservation, and rescue and rehabilitation. So there's really those 3 main programs that we work toward. Obviously, we have the Wildlife Hospital, which is where we treat injured and orphaned wildlife. We have a wildlife hotline that people can call if they find injured or orphaned wildlife, or really with any kind of wildlife related question. And then we do a lot of on-site, off-site virtual education programming for K through 12 youth, and then also just the general public. And then finally, we do some conservation services where we go out and do beaver habitat restoration, beaver conservation work, because they are keystone species and support a lot of the native wildlife here.
Oh, that's so cool. That's really interesting. So I kind of want to focus a little bit on birds of prey and raptors today. So I'm just wondering, in the rehab center, what is the most common injury that raptors come into the rehab with?
Yeah. So raptor injuries with adult raptors, the most common injury that we see is vehicle collision. And usually that ends up in head trauma or, you know, like a broken wing, broken shoulder, broken wrist, something like that. So technically, you know, we've been in the off season for a couple months now. So in wildlife rehab, you have the busy season, which is usually May through September. And then the slower season is October through April. And so it's really in that off season that we see a lot of adult raptors coming in from vehicle collisions, barbed wire fence injuries, maybe lead poisoning, all sorts of different things. But yeah, vehicle collisions would be number 1, I would say.
So describe what you mean by lead poisoning.
Yeah. So basically, if they're shot, or, you know, they eat an animal that was shot or something like that with a lead bullet, that can be lead poisoning. We also cases of rat poisoning, where maybe they're eating a rodent that was poisoned. So those are kind of the 2. We're actually lead testing is something that the local OSU university here does research on. And so we're actually fundraising to get a lead testing kit that we can test every single raptor that comes in for lead. And they can actually use that data for the research.
Oh, that's incredible. So they're eating mice and things like that we've then poisoned from our houses and that sort of thing. Is there anything you would recommend to not use if you want to get rid of mice? I mean, is there any raptor friendly mouse control?
I mean, raptors are going to be your best all natural pest control. So it's actually the exact opposite, right? A lot of people don't realize, but Central Oregon is actually very rural. We have a ton of, you know, large land stewards here, farmers, ranchers. And so really it's, you know, if they're using any kind of rat poison or anything like that, that's where our raptors are hunting, because they go out to these ranch areas, these farmland where there are a bunch of mice, maybe because there's a lot of like hay or crops or things that. And so that's where they're really vulnerable. The best form of pest control, I think, is actually you can put up like owl nest boxes, or just make your yard or your land really suitable for raptors. And next thing you know, they'll all be there hunting for the vermin that you're trying to get rid of. So that's great, because it not only is a form of pest control, or pest control in quotations, because I don't like any wild animals as pests, but
right.
The form of pest control for you. And then it's also a great way to support your top predators, your birds of prey on your landscape.
So other than putting up boxes, what are some other tips you could? That's such a great idea. I love that.
Yeah. So putting up owl nest boxes, basically any kind of nesting habitat. So having your old growth trees is really important. Here in Central Oregon, we have a lot of junipers. And so that's where we find our owls, great horned owls, nesting, especially this time of year. Another thing you can do is, if you're doing any kind of landscaping, leave some of your leaf litter around, because leaf litter will support little like vermin, like little mice and stuff like that the raptors can hunt for, rock piles, piles of wood, stuff like that. Another thing that you can do is if you're doing any kind of tree trimming or anything like that, just make sure you're checking the trees for any nests beforehand. I know I mentioned the most common injury for adult raptors is vehicle collisions, but this time of year, we're getting anywhere from like 2 to 3 calls a day about baby owls that have been fallen from their nests, or maybe knocked out of the tree from tree trimming or something like that. So just checking for that before doing any kind of landscaping is a great idea.
And we have a little bit of property where we keep specific old dead trees up for the owls specifically. They have the little holes. And I know sometimes, if you can cut those trees down and not know that buried within the tree is a little owl family.
Yeah, exactly. So most owls depend on that old growth forest, and especially if they're cavity nesters, that's really important for them. Obviously, if they're building nests that sit on a limb or something, then there's more options. But if they are cavity nesters, it's pretty limited options for them, and so they really do rely on those big old growth trees. Another thing that we always advise, especially if you do have a lot of land, is to remove any kind of barbed wire fencing. So a lot of birds of prey, might not realize that the barbed wire is there, and they'll get caught in it. And usually it's a pretty nasty injury where a lot of times we can't rehabilitate it. Maybe it's a broken wing or a really traumatic wound injury. And so actually here in Central Oregon, our Department of Justice has a juvenile program where they all go out and remove barbed wire fencing at no cost. So maybe looking for a similar program in your area, seeing if there's anybody who will remove that barbed wire fencing, or just doing it yourself and installing some safe wildlife friendly fencing instead.
So what does that happen? Are the birds flying low, and then they just get snagged by that little sharp bit, and they just get all tangled up?
Exactly. So usually they'll be flying low. Maybe they're looking for a mouse or rat or some kind of vermin to prey on, and they just kind of get caught in that fence. Maybe they were going to perch on it and they don't realize that it was barbed wire fencing. It is pretty thin, so it's not always obvious that they are going to get caught in it. And the problem is, once they do get caught in it, there's no way for them to get out. So while they're struggling, they'll get even more entangled in it. And this is a threat for birds of prey, but I mean, really all animals. Like we had a little baby fox that was caught in barbed wire fencing. It was paralyzed. So it's all animals that are vulnerable to it.
Yeah. Wow. Poor little babies.
I was going to say a big question we get, especially when we talk about why the vehicle collisions are such a big threat to them. So it's like, well, why are they getting hit by cars? So it's kind of interesting to think about, why are they getting hit by cars? Well, it's because basically, if you have a road, it's a big open area. And if you have a little mouse or a little chipmunk or a little rat that runs across the road, think about how much easier it is for a raptor to see that little mouse on a road versus in a field or like a meadow or a place that has forest in it. So basically, raptors have grown with the human populations to realize that if they hunt along the roads, they have a better chance of finding their prey. Obviously, this also puts them in danger of getting hit by a car, especially when they're going down to get that prey. And so that's why we see a lot of vehicle collisions. Another thing to think about is, when you throw something out your car window, like an apple core or a banana peel or something that you're like, oh, it's biodegradable, that attracts those vermin to come to the road and feed on that, which then attracts the raptors to come feed on those and get hit by a car. We see the same thing with like vultures. If they're eating roadkill, sometimes they'll get hit by cars as well.
Yeah, I've seen that where because people hit deer or animals, they pull them off to the side of the road, and then the birds of prey, the vultures are there, coming up and down, and they just get tagged by a car. So
yeah. Yep.
Speaking of vultures, I feel like raptors, especially vultures, are kind of demonized in our culture and other cultures as well. Talk to us about the really critical role that they play in keeping a healthy balance in nature.
Yeah, I love vultures. So when I worked at the aquarium, we had 2 vulture ambassadors. And that was one of my favorite talks that we would do, is about how important vultures are for the ecosystem. And this is for a variety of reasons. I mean, the main one being prevention of disease spread. So obviously, if you have animals that are hit by a car or rotting on the side of the road, or really dead animals anywhere that are rotting, vultures play such a key role in removing that dead biomaterial, helping with the decomposition process and therefore preventing the disease spread. If they weren't there helping to get rid of those decomposing, animals, then we'd have a lot more of them around. And that's kind of a big source of disease spread, is having that dead matter that's decomposing and stuff like that. Basically just helping with the degrading process. And I would say vultures are also important because they're one of the very few raptors that are eating that dead material. So most animals, including birds of prey, predators, do not eat dead animals. They'll actually only hunt for live animals. And so it's one of the very few that we can actually rely on and depend on to get rid of those, that dead material. So we do get a ton of calls from people asking if we can remove the dead animal from their yard, like a dead deer, or what should they do with this dead bird or something. And there's very few resources to deal with that. And so that's why we should really depend on these important animals, these important vultures that are providing that service at no charge to us.
Right, exactly. And I had even heard, I went on safari in South Africa, and they were talking about how the vulture's poop even does something. So they're like neutralizing the area from germs and decay, even on that level.
That's cool. This isn't really related to how they're useful, but I think it's a pretty neat fact. But vultures will actually vomit in order to scare away predators. It's kind of interesting because it's 2 things. It's very smelly, and so that deters the predator from wanting to attack them. And then I guess just like the projectile force of it also scares the predator away.
Yeah, it would scare me if a vulture puked.
I mean, that works for me. When I get projectile vomited on, I'm out. Yeah, I'm 100% out. So that makes sense.
All of a sudden you lost your appetite.
Yeah, I will vacate.
That is premises. Brilliant. That's actually really comical too. They're like, yeah, this is mine. So you talked about how we could support them in their ecosystem in our own backyards. And would you say then, building some habitats, leaving some wood, some branches, some leaves, but also maybe, I don't know that you need to keep the dead deer in your backyard, but moving it or giving them the option to take care of it, like you're saying, free of charge. I mean, that's the best way.
Yeah. And I think, owl nest box. Yeah, just any kind of native planting you can do. I know everybody likes their green grass yards, but that doesn't really support native wildlife. It doesn't really support pollinators or anything like that. So everything in our ecosystem is kind of a chain, and everything depends on one another. And if you plant native plants, native flowers, native shrubs, it supports the pollinators, which supports the insect eating animals, which supports the small mammals, which supports the raptors. And so everything's connected, and native planting is really important.
So I just want to touch back to the baby animals, because that's another question, is what do we do when we find a baby animal or an injured adult animal?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I actually just got a call this morning about a little great horned owlet that somebody found at the base of a tree, and was doing this little chirping thing, and they didn't see the mother nearby, but they did know where the nest was. And so I know it's a common myth that if you touch a baby bird that the parent will come back, but it is just a myth. In almost every case, if you find a baby bird on the ground and you do know where the nest is, you can just put the bird back in the nest. No promises that it won't just jump out again, because if it's
Right.
what they do. But yeah, you can put it back in the nest. If you're not able to reach the nest, you can actually just get like a little Tupperware, make like a little makeshift nest, put the baby bird or baby owl in the little makeshift nest and set it on a branch. The parents are pretty smart. They have really great eyesight, really great hearing. They can figure out where their baby is, and they'll continue feeding it. The main thing is you just want to make sure it's high enough off the ground where a predator can't get to it, or get injured or something like that. If you suspect that the baby is injured, or you find an adult that's injured, I would look up your local wildlife hospital. Almost every area has a wildlife hospital within an hour or two of it. So just give them a call. With an adult raptor, you usually don't want to touch it with your bare hands. They can carry diseases and parasites and little fleas and stuff like that. So
Right.
If you're certain that it's injured and you feel comfortable, you can always try to use like a broom or something to sweep it into a large box, and you can keep it in the box in like a warm, dark, quiet location until you get in touch with somebody.
Yeah. I think, we grew up finding baby birds on the ground, and that have fallen out of the nest, and they were either got shoved out. I mean, Mother Nature's kind of rough sometimes, and they really do like flop out and they have that, I guess, kind of like a 2-day window where they have to be super vulnerable to build strength and to learn how to fly. And it's that sort of vulnerable 48 hours when they, but they aren't necessarily in need of help. And that's why I think us as humans don't always know what the best thing to do is. So just make sure that they really are injured, and then let nature take its course too. And those mama parents, the mommy and daddy, they do know what they're doing, actually.
Yeah. The main thing we want to prevent is what we call baby napping. So it's the person who brings the baby out on the ground, they bring it inside, keep it overnight, and then they bring it to our wildlife hospital. And like, but wait, this owl is perfectly fine. Let's reunite it. And so that's something we've been doing a lot of, is reuniting. Sometimes birds will actually adopt babies that aren't their own. So with goslings, that's something that we post on our social media, like, if anybody sees any families, we need to find an adoption parent.
Right. But, so you can reunite them. You could take a little owl into your rehab center, and then you could say, well, this is where it was. And then you can put them back, and that's good to know.
We can try, but ultimately we don't want to ever, baby nap or accidentally take a baby, because it's so much more difficult to try to reunite than it is to just right there and then.
Right.
Sally, do you find that your hotline helps with a lot of that people don't even have to bring them in, and then you can just tell them, just leave it and just watch it? Yeah. So I feel like that probably solves a lot of your problems.
Yeah. So we track every single hotline call that comes in, so we can collect data on it. Then we use that data to inform our education priorities. But actually about 40% of our calls are resolved through education right there over the phone. Then about 15% of our calls are what we call nuisance calls. So it's people calling us because they want to find a humane alternative to pest control. So that's something that we're really trying to expand, is going out and doing site visits and consultations to help people figure out how they can do humane exclusion.
Yeah, nice. That's awesome.
I have another question, just for my own personal edification. Owl boxes. If you have an owl box, how far away does it have to be from another owl box for them not to feel like it's too close?
That's a good question, especially if you do want your nice lawn and you just are going to put bird or owl boxes in. That's a good question.
I would say one owl nest box per property. I mean, if you have like a ton of acres, then I mean, go for it. But you really want your owl nest box to be on a pretty big tree, like an old growth tree. Another thing you really need to be careful of with your owl nest boxes is making sure that they're not accessible to predators and to I guess, other predatory birds. So, for example, we held an owl nest workshop for barn owl nest boxes. And I remember the instructions were so specific because they were like, if you don't make this correct, then the little babies are going to be predated on. And so definitely do your research, decide what kind of owl nest box you want to make, what species you're trying to target, what species are local to your area, native to your area. And then just make sure you follow those instructions pretty closely. Like I know for ours, they had like little steps that the owls would take.
No,
to get
definitely. Yeah, they have that. And also I've heard like that you want to have a branch below the box so that they can, and so they're not just out, if you just have a really long trunk, you don't want them just on the trunk where there's no
right. No pressure treated wood, water-based stain, all that animal safe stuff.
Yeah, right. So is there one thing that we kind of all should know? Like what do you think, what if you could tell us one thing or 5 things, what would it be?
Okay. So I guess I'll just start like listing off my top things, but I would say the greatest threat to our raptor populations and really all native wildlife overall is urban expansion. And so if we're talking about a place like Bend, Oregon, one of the fastest growing cities in the United States, we are growing at such a fast rate that the native wildlife can't keep up. And so what we're finding is that there's more and more conflicts between humans and wildlife as we expand into their habitats. And so I think something really important is getting involved with not only the big overall government, but with your local governments, because they're the ones who are making the decisions about how your town or your city is going to sustainably grow with the environment. We have BLM land that backs up to pretty much every single edge of our city. And so there's constantly decisions being made about how our urban development is going to work. Are we going to have wildlife corridors? Are we going to make room for more sustainable transportation? And so getting involved in this, voting, making your voice heard for city council meetings is so important. I know we're working on a wildlife feeding ban in Redmond, Oregon. We currently have one in Bend, but that's because last year, most of our calls were about geese that had angel wing, which is a nutritional deficiency caused by them being fed by humans.
Interesting.
So things like I know it's voting in your local government, getting involved.
Absolutely.
Part of the conversations is so important. And then I think something else that is really important is just spreading awareness and spreading education about these incredible animals. If you know somebody that is using rat poison or is using, a non-humane method of animal control, doing some research on what are some humane methods, what are some methods that could help, not only be more humane for the animals that are getting trapped, but also make sure that anything that's predating on them will be safe too. And then obviously we've already talked about this, but making your property wildlife friendly, maybe going away from the green grass. I mean, we're here in a desert in Bend, Oregon. We are a desert, and yet we have golf courses and green yards and landscaping, when really if we transform this into a native landscape, it would help our wildlife and it would help our issue with droughts and wildfires too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's really, really good information and a lot of good tips. And do you have a favorite bird at all? Favorite wildlife animal? Something that just is sort of like I don't know. It's what you love the most. I don't know. That's a hard one.
So I know we're not supposed to have favorites, but right. I definitely have favorites. So my favorite animal in the world is a coyote. I just love coyotes. My dog is named Wile E. Coyote. I think they are misunderstood and just amazing creature. And we have them all over here in Central Oregon. But in terms of raptors, I do have a favorite, and it's we actually had a recent experience, but a great gray owl. Those are actually native here to Central Oregon. They are an Oregon Conservation Strategy species, which means that they are specifically managed by the state for their conservation. They're a declining species. They do rely really heavily on, old growth forest, stuff like that. But it's kind of, I've always loved owls, but the great gray owl is my new favorite because we got this owl in it hit a window, and that's pretty rare for such a large bird. It is the largest owl species, I think, like by length or something. And we had it for a couple weeks, and I was actually the one who was able to do the intake on it, help care for it, and then be the one who released it out of the crate back into the wild. And
amazing. That must be an incredible moment, actually.
Yeah, I had tears in my eyes, definitely. It was me and my vet that went, and we also invited the people that had originally found it, she was also a retired veterinarian, and big avid bird photographer. And so it was a really incredible moment. And, Think Wild, having really gotten started during a pandemic, we've had to overcome a lot of obstacles. And so it was a moment for me personally that felt like everything that we'd overcome and everything we'd worked towards was worth it, because in this moment we were basically saving a member of an endangered species. So yeah, that was a really cool moment for me, I think. So now they have a special place in my heart. Absolutely.
And that owl, you should, listeners should Google that. The animal, it's an outstanding looking animal. I mean, it's just absolutely gorgeous. This bird, big and beautiful, and definitely something should be very much treasured. I mean, yeah, how incredible.
I think it was a part of a breeding pair too, which makes it even more important. And the first time I ever saw a great gray owl was when I was in Yellowstone. And I remember there was a huge crowd of people, like all with their binoculars and so excited because it's such a rare invasive species. And then then we have one come into the wildlife hospital. And it's like after 2 months of us being open, and I was like, this is crazy.
That's incredible. Well, Sally, thank you so much for what you do for animals and raptors, and your enthusiasm is contagious, and really love hearing about all this stuff. Just let us know where we can. Tell us your website, your socials. How can we support, either donating or volunteering for Think Wild?
Yeah, definitely. So we are, like I said, a nonprofit organization, so we don't get any kind of government funding or anything like that. We rely really on individual donations from people just like you and me. And if you want to learn more about our organization, our website is www.thinkwildco.org. So that's like Think Wild Central Oregon, but it's co.org. If you want to support us, like I said, we are fundraising for a raptor lead testing kit. So if you want to make a donation, on behalf of that, we'd really appreciate it. It will help with, doing research on raptors. And then, follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and we're also on TikTok. So you can check out all of our cute animal videos and learn more about wildlife, and about how to help wildlife in your area.
Oh, that's incredible. All right. So get on your website. That's where you can support. Sally, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, guys, we're back with the takeaway. So that was a cool conversation.
Yeah, it really was. I think I loved her stories. I loved her talking about the challenges that these birds of prey especially face between the lead poisoning, the poisoning of rodents, all that stuff.
Cars, getting hit by cars.
Because they're trying to, eat. Because prey is easy to see on the road. It's just like, I'd never thought of why they would get hit by cars. I thought of, like you were talking about, vultures eating on the side of the road, but never that. And I really loved that, like so many things, it basically, one of her things was, it comes back to getting involved with our local politics and getting involved in talking about how we interact with wildlife, and that we can't just expect that someone like her is going to come along and advocate for them. That we actually, that's actually not something that my brain automatically goes to.
Yeah, getting on like a local government level.
Yeah, to really find out what are we doing about these issues.
Yeah.
And we don't have the same situations as Ben because we're not a rural, huge, sprawling area. But there are things like window strikes in Philadelphia is a huge problem. And there's been a lot of change lately. I've watched just because we can't just do whatever we want anymore and think it's not going to affect wildlife, or
absolutely
turning off the lights in the skyscrapers in Philadelphia is something I think that just recently there was some traction on because these poor migrating birds, it's not the same issues. But again, if we don't advocate for them, who is?
Right. So what's the issue with the migrating birds? Do they look down and they see lights? So it confuses them
because a lot of them migrate at night. So it's, they can't their GPS doesn't work the same if there's all this light pollution.
Oh,
it's
interesting.
very hard for them
because they can't see necessarily. I'm gonna have to look into that. That's really interesting.
Can't articulate exactly, but it's definitely it messes with
pollution.
Them.
It's like sound pollution is the same. Wildlife is really struggling in certain areas because they can't hear each other.
Right.
It's like whales in the ocean. They can't hear each other for all of the commuter noise of freighters and fishing and all that.
Just stuff we don't think about.
Yeah. She had really good tips about, putting up owl boxes, not 5 on your property, but 1, and, keeping up the old trees. She just had some really great real practical life tips. Yes. That I could actually implement that I'm going to do.
It makes you feel good. Yeah.
But that takes me to kind of the big takeaway for me was when she was mentioning the great gray owl, and the beavers, and she talked about how they're a keystone species. And Karen Vardaman had talked about that, our wolf lady episode, talking about her wolf conservation. And I just wanted to dig into that because it really hadn't struck me. I've heard of keystone species before, but so I looked up the definition. Is a species on which other species in an ecosystem largely depend, such that if it were removed, the ecosystem would change drastically. And I looked up a list of keystone species and was really surprised to see which ones were that definition. I wouldn't have thought a great gray owl was.
I certainly wouldn't have thought a beaver was, but once I thought about it, like I thought keystone species, wolves make sense because, just how
like
they
a wolf
keep prey
or an elephant or whatever, the big guys.
Right. I didn't think of beaver, but then when you think about the implications that they have. Yeah.
And they were critical in getting Yellowstone back into balance as well. Like they cut the trees down, they make the water gets dammed up, and it's like the dam and the hydration of the environment, just incredible. And then it sort of led me to think, well, are we a keystone species? And that led me down a little bit of a rabbit hole, and led me to Wikipedia. And this is their definition, which I thought was really interesting. They say a keystone species is a species which has a disproportionately large effect on its natural environment relative to its abundance, a concept introduced by a zoologist in 1969 named Robert Payne, who I'd not heard of. Keystone species play a critical role in maintaining the structure of an ecological community, affecting many other organisms in an ecosystem and helping to determine the types and numbers of various other species in the community. Without keystone species, the ecosystem would be dramatically different or cease to exist altogether. And then the question is, if we're talking about humans, he answers that by saying, oh, we're above that, we're hyper keystones. And this is a quote from The Atlantic. He says, we are the influencer of influencers, the keystone species that disproportionately affects other keystone species, the Earthstone that dictates the fate of every arch. So that just gave me chills a little bit, because I feel like, okay, we are a keystone species, but I was really trying to find out how we positively affect all of these ecosystems in a disproportionate way. And then it took me back to when everything got shut down in the pandemic, how nature just seemed to immediately flourish. And and go to areas they haven't been before. And I mean, it's kind of a kick in the gut a little bit, but it's just that reminder again of how we really are so responsible for our actions.
Yeah.
And I'm okay being a keystone species. I don't like the disproportionate way and the sort of it feels heavy. So again, it just takes me back to, why are we even doing Kindred? Why are we talking about this? So that you and I can learn to take off a little bit of these or a lot of the effects that I'm having on the planet. So maybe I can affect other species in a positive way.
Which brings us full circle back to exactly what Sally was talking about too. It's like, here's the ways, which is what you're asking. How can we make a difference? And that's the macro of all macros with this whole thing, is why we're doing this, is to raise awareness and to find out the ways that relatively easy and uncomplicated things we can do.
Yeah.
Don't throw all your leaves out in the fall, things like that.
Just little things.
And
little
it just
things.
is actually as crushing as it is that we have this effect on nature. It's also those little hopeful glimmers of, oh, there is something I can do that I can do today. Yeah. Little me. I don't have to change my life that much, and I can make a difference. Because that's, I think, the good news, is that if we all do a little bit, then there's obviously all these people we're talking to who are doing a lot.
Yes.
Then we're all working together and things will get better.
The conservationists also who are taking shame, blame, guilt out of this conversation, instead of, me just sort of like feeling like I just need to take a nap because it feels like a heavy burden some days. That it's just about doing the little things when you can't do the big things.
Which is exactly the thing, is you get paralyzed if you look at the whole picture. Yep. And I know people who can barely function because they are so overwhelmed by the state of the world. And that's not going to help anybody. So getting to that point of let the shame and the guilt take you down and make you basically useless. So it's like, no, okay, there are things I can do. And is this going to change in a day? No, but if we, it's little efforts like everything else. It's just.
And like, there's people like that we've been talking to that suddenly they've done enough work that something does change in a day.
Yeah.
The one day where a state says, we're going to not pass legislation where you can go kill 90% of the wolves.
Right.
We're going to stop that.
Yeah.
And then you get on for 3 seconds, you sign a petition and it works.
Yeah.
Or governments, the UK put a ban on
like exporting.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. The UK put a ban on exporting shark fins. And that's a huge moment.
Yeah. There you go.
For the shark community, which is a keystone species.
Right.
So if we can just even learning what those are, what are the top dogs? What are the ones that really make the most impact? If we take all the sharks out of the ocean or the wolves off the land, we're really screwed. I bet you bees are a keystone species.
They have to be because they give us food. Yeah.
Without them, we don't get pollinated. Yeah. Trees are a keystone species because without them, we don't have oxygen.
Right.
So it's understanding who are our allies.
Yeah.
Just got to keep our heads up, stay positive.
That's right.
Do the little things, also do the big things.
Do all the things you can.
Do all the things. Just one thing to mention for Think Wild, they are on Instagram. Their handle is Think Wild Co. So that's Think Wild CO. And then their website is thinkwildco.org. Thanks for joining us. Lots of love. Kindred is hosted by me and my sister Jen, produced by Kat Gaddy and myself, sound production and editing by Dan Cooper, original music by Ellie Grace, and our Kindred artwork was created by Lindsay Coffin. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts, and feel free to contact us through our website, kindredpodcast.co, where you can also find all our links to our socials and Patreon page.